be, will be, we will begin as usual with the Pledge of Allegiance, led this evening by myself. So if you are able, please stand and join us in saluting our nation's flag. All right, thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Funk?
Here.
Councilmember Newsom is absent. Councilmember Peak?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Daris?
Here.
Mayor Barbeau?
Here. Okay.
4 present, 1 absent.
All right, thank you. Well, if you are attending in person or listening to the City Council meeting this evening on one of our many avenues for doing so, welcome. We appreciate you listening in. We are going to begin this evening with the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of items that are considered routine and non-controversial by city staff. They will be acted upon in a single motion unless a member of the council wishes to pull an item for separate consideration. So I will begin by asking if I have any questions or any council member wishing to pull an item. Okay, seeing none, we'll go out and see if there's any public comment on items on the consent calendar. Okay, seeing none, I'll come back to council for a motion.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second. Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Funk and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Daris. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Funk?
Yes.
Councilmember Peak?
Yes.
Sorry. Mayor Pro Tem Daris?
Yes.
Mayor Barbeau?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will proceed on to updates from the city manager. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Good evening. And we're almost into May. Hard to believe. First, I wanted to share about the Battle of the Badges blood drive. So please join our police department for a blood drive. We want to make sure we contribute the most blood of all the cities. This is April 30th from 11 till 4:30. So it's this week, April 30th from 11 till 4:30. We can donate at the Colony Park Community Center locally. And this is our annual blood drive, and we're battling to see who can raise the most blood to save lives. And so I will be there. I hope to see many of you there this Thursday, April 30th. May means it's Tamale Festival. So here we go, May 1st and May 2nd. This is one of our most large events downtown. It starts Friday, May 1st at 5 p.m. with Fiesta Friday. We have live music performed, and tamale vendors will be open for a sneak peek. And the sneak peek is really important because most of these will be gone early on Saturday. So the sneak peek is a good opportunity to try everything, and you want to make sure you do that. And then on Saturday, May 2nd, from 11 till 7, we'll have 100 vendors on display with a number of tamales, food, beverages, contests, everything else you need. And most important, the Central Coast Zoo Foundation is hosting the adult beverages for purchase in the Sunken Gardens with wine, beer, coffee, and cider. The event is free, and all of the proceeds from the beverages will go to the Central Coast Zoo. So we're very grateful for that. Arriving soon. So arriving sooner than that new 2026 Pierce Enforcer. Look at that beautiful fire engine. That is a thank you to the City Council for your investment in public safety. You continue to do this, and that is going to be a beautiful engine that will serve us for years with the Greyhound Gray. So that's a very unique color pattern that will really identify our engines. And but before that arrives on likely Monday or Tuesday, so we're looking forward to that. What arrived today is our firefighters moved into their home at Station 2. So the temporary home is active. I paid them a visit and offered them a housewarming present, and they'll be living there for a little while. So we've broken ground on Station 2. We'll celebrate that next week. You'll be hearing dates shortly. And so we're really excited. That's a big moment. This is the first major step in our safety facilities construction project, which was a D20 goal. And you've kept the word of the community. And so good job, council. We're rolling, and we'll show you that next week. But yeah, this was brought back from Appleton, Wisconsin. The final inspection was completed, and the engine is a beauty. So look forward to you seeing that. It's being driven up from Ontario, California this weekend. So there you go. Next, we have our lemur habitat grand opening. Look at that fun little lemur right there. Don't get too close. The Central Coast Zoo is thrilled to invite you to experience our newly renovated lemur habitat on May 15th. And so this continues to be part of our Madagascar biodiversity hotspot. And doors open at 10. General admission is required, but the event of the grand opening is free. And continuing to celebrate the Central Coast Zoo, the 23rd annual Ice Cream Zoofari. Tickets are on sale now. This is Saturday, June 6th from 5 to 8. All you can eat ice cream and sundaes and toppings. You cannot beat that on a warm June day. So all you can eat ice cream. Tickets include full zoo admission and unlimited sweet treats. So there you go. And I always enjoy that this is sponsored by Pure Dentistry. So this is good for their business. Oh, the Ice Cream Zoofari. So we appreciate that. And then Memorial Day, we'll be having our wonderful Memorial Day ceremony hosted by the Atascadero Veterans Memorial Foundation. We're so grateful for their service to our community at 11 a.m. at the Faces of Freedom Memorial. Very meaningful event to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice. And I think our celebration is very honoring and very well attended. And the Kiwanis Club of Atascadero, just a terrific service club, will be having a barbecue following the ceremony. Finally, I wanted to share, this is Crystal Horn. She's the Administrative Assistant in Community Development. She serves as the Planning Commission Clerk, and our Assistant City Manager and Clerk, Laura Christensen, and Alyssa Slater are at the annual City Clerks Association meeting starting today. So we thank you for stepping in, and I know you'll do a very great job. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Yeah, and I would comment, I know you're giving blood on Thursday morning and I'm giving blood Thursday afternoon. Encourage anybody else interested. This is a great opportunity and it's convenient and local at the community center. So please consider signing up. You go to Vitalent and you can do it, or you can be old like me and call them and make an appointment. Also, Mr. Lewis, today we were going to, a while back we were going to do the ribbon cutting for the monarch and pollinator exhibit, but that has been rescheduled, and I'd like you to tell everybody what date it's been rescheduled to.
June 9th, and we're giving the plants a little more chance to grow and get strength. And so we also had a little more fencing to put in, but June 9th, look forward to that.
Okay, thank you. Does any other member of the council have any questions for the city manager? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to our next item on the agenda, which is community forum. And community forum is this portion of the meeting which is reserved for people wishing to address the council on items that are not on the agenda. The Brown Act prohibits the council from going into discussion on items that are not on the published agenda. Therefore, if you do speak on something, we will not be able to do anything more than maybe answer a brief question or ask staff to answer a question or ask staff to get together with you at another time. But we do, of course, listen and pay attention to what's said in community forum. So with that, I'd like to open it up for any member of the public wishing to speak. You have 3 minutes. We'd ask you, please go ahead and line up so we don't have to wait to cross the room. And we ask that you state your name for the record. So first speaker, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Bourbeau and council members. My name is Jennifer Adams. I'm the CEO of Lumina Alliance. I'm here representing Lumina Alliance, our mission is to empower those who've been impacted by sexual assault or intimate partner violence through advocacy, healing, and prevention programs. Our agency, though we've changed names several times over the years, has been supporting survivors for 50 years. This year is actually the 50th anniversary of our 24-hour crisis hotline. With confidential and no-cost services, such as our 24-hour crisis and information line, we provide self-sufficiency services, emergency shelters, one of which is here in Atascadero, transitional housing, individual and group therapy, and a robust prevention program. Last year, we saw a 30% increase in our hotline calls. That's a dramatic increase from over the year before. And recent CDC statistics recognize that more than 45% of women have experienced sexual violence here in the United States, which accounts for, in San Luis Obispo County, 63,000 women. This year, during Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which is April, we look to shine a light on those groups whose survivorship often goes unacknowledged. While we recognize that sexual assault can be experienced by anyone, certain groups, such as undocumented individuals, transgender folks, and those living with disabilities, are uniquely vulnerable. Despite this, these groups are often the least likely to have access to services, and the violence they experience is often in the shadows. This April, we're committed to illuminating the path towards a brighter future for all survivors. Please remember, if you or anyone you know is experiencing sexual or intimate partner violence and needs help, to please call our 24-hour crisis hotline at 805-545-8888 for help. Now, on a little positive note, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that our signature gala, Lumina Nights, which features Dancing with Our Stars, which was born right here in Atascadero and was responsible for getting that beautiful library finished. We are celebrating this Friday and Saturday. So you can go have a tamale, just have one, and then you can come to the event. We're going to be having this event at the new Vina Robles Tasting Room up in Paso. The event has sold out, but you can still support any one of your favorite slow celebrity star dancers by going to luminanights.org. We have 3 North County dancers this year: Joel Peterson with Wine Country Alliance, Chris Beal with Paso Robles City Council, and Bruce Gibson, our District 2 County Supervisor. And of course, we have our forever star dancer, Heather Moreno, who will be dancing with the alumni that she danced with last year. So she'll be opening it up.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jenny, you're out of time.
Oh, goodness. I'm so sorry. How did that go so fast? Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. I appreciate the
Thank you,
time.
and thank you for what Lumina Alliance does for the community. I wish we could say we lived in a society that didn't need your services, but we do. Like every society has this problem, and so we're glad you're here to provide services to folks in Atascadero especially. So thank you for what you do.
Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Eric Cleveland. I thought we were speaking single-family resident zoning tonight, and in case I'm not able to make it whenever it comes up, I hope that the council will consider gross versus net when they determine sizes. I believe in Public Works may be able to give you guys more information. There was a subdivision put just south of our property on Atascadero Avenue a few years ago, and it's a 50-foot wide easement. That's the same as Atascadero Avenue. It serves 6 lots. It's a larger easement than San Gabriel Road, San Diego Road and stuff. So when you start doing that and you're going net, now you've positioned where the houses can go. And our property is unique in that there's 5 oak trees that are probably 200 years old. Single family dwellings, you're allowed to cut those down if you need to build the house. I've spent a lot of money pruning them and getting them ready to go whenever we're able to start building homes. So hopefully when that comes up, you guys will look at gross over net. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cleveland. And yes, good to come speak tonight if you're not going to be able to make it when that comes up. So, yeah. Okay, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Mr. Oslin.
Good evening, council and staff. I have a few things like answered. Is there fines involved if you violate a sign ordinance? That's number 1. Number 2 is there fines involved when you don't do what you're supposed to do on your property? For instance, when trucks are unloading at 6 in the morning, still at our new supermarket, Home Depot has stopped their trucks, by the way, at 5:30 or 6:30 in the morning. They may be parked there, they're not idling, and they're not offloading those trucks before 7. So they did get that message loud and clear, but there still is a problem with the neighborhood behind Valley Fresh, and it needs to be addressed, please. Third, I want to commend Ellie downstairs. She always gives the right answer or finds the right answer for anybody coming in, and her service is awesome. I will discuss somebody else that's giving wrong answers at another time. And then I want to talk about our tree ordinance. And Mr. Bentz was fantastic in answering questions, but 4 feet from the side of the road would be like this. And if you live on the west side, that's the area that we're not doing anything with the general plan update. Mr. Lewis, you used to live over there as well. 4 feet off the side of the road, you should look at where the trunks of the trees are. There's no curb, there's no sidewalk, and they're right up against the pavement. So that does not one size fit all for our city. The next problems that you have is if you have a tree and it's growing, and our council has discussed this before in parking lots with putting retardants on and how you cut a tree so we do have shade. But when a tree grows, they like to grow up and get to the sun. When PG&E comes in, they like to cut it away from their power lines. So that puts natural growth going all different directions other than up, which puts it in the road. And it is a burden on our residents to have to continue to trim at 14 feet. We have not done this in years. We are doing it now because this is the direction either of our city manager or council, of you folks that run the city. We need to be educating people a little bit better, and we need to look at the west side in particular a little differently, because otherwise what's going to happen is trees are magically going to get cut down in our wonderful city because it's very cost prohibited to have to get an encroachment permit, do one lane traffic control, or close a road for a few minutes so you can trim a tree, because that's what you're having our residents do. PG&E does it, but they're the culprit of most of the problems on the west side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huslin. And staff has made note of your questions, and of course, they do know how to get a hold of you. So I'm going to ask that Mr. Dunsmore and perhaps Mr. DeBar can reach out to you on those specific issues you raised. So, okay, thank you. Anybody else wishing to approach? Okay, seeing none, we will move on from community forum to our next item, which is G1, a management report regarding zoning code updates. I believe this is going to be Mr. Dunsmore, Community Development Director, will present this item.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. This is the fourth time that we've had a in-depth zoning discussion, so I thank you for your patience as we go through all these details. Our intent really is to bring you a piece at a time, so it's not too much complexity to digest. Tonight, we're going to be talking about commercial land uses specifically, and we're also going to touch on non-conforming uses in the downtown and some of our development standards and a little bit of the definitions we've been working on as well. Now, I will mention that we're going to have to bifurcate this discussion a little bit. We do have a conflict of interest from one of the council members, so we'll break this up a little bit. I also wanted to mention that there's a couple of potential breaks throughout this presentation where we can go out for public comment, and I'll kind of leave that to the mayor, and I'll suggest that. That way we're not going back and forth through this presentation since we've got to break off a piece at the end. I'll also mention that the presentation is not going to follow the staff report order a little bit because of that bifurcation. We're going to talk about the non-conforming uses first, which is really at the tail end of your staff report. So I don't want to confuse you. I just want to give you some info up front. But anyway, a little background about what we've done thus far. February 10th, we came with you for a general discussion about process and the overall order of the new zoning. Then we came to you with a good discussion on mixed use. And then we continued that discussion on March 24th and also talked about the land uses in those mixed use districts, which include the downtown and some of those other mixed use districts that are basically zones within commercial zones. Tonight, we're talking about just commercial uses, and that involves 3 land use districts or place types. And we'll be talking about the zoning that will come out of those particular land use districts. Now, tonight I am joined by our planning manager, Kelly, to my right. I also have Genevieve Sharrow with MIG that'll be on the line, and she'll give the basis of the discussion for you because she's really good at detailing these things out. So let's start with a little background on the downtown. I mean, the downtown district, we've done a lot of work on it over the years, and it's really progressing nicely. Our downtown enhancement plan has really helped that. But it's an area that's really intended to support pedestrian-oriented uses, active ground floor uses that enhance economic vitality. It's really about the restaurants, it's the entertainment, it's having nightlife. And I will definitely say that all of our events, such as what we're going to be seeing this weekend with Tamale Fest, have really enhanced the land uses themselves as well. But when we talk about the downtown and we try and guide zoning to the future, we're oftentimes trying to say, what makes sense? You know, the offices do make sense. They're great downtown, but are what they want, are they what you want on the ground floor around the park? Maybe there's other uses that are more consistent with this purpose. So we do have a few of these non-conforming land uses, the medical offices, the ground floor residential, the gas station, storage and warehousing. And we do have an existing ordinance that has a limitation on their time. When there's a vacancy, we have a 6-month sort of grace period. And then the code basically says they must conform to the current land use. And so right now, our zoning does say that ground floor offices, at least around Sunken Gardens Park, along El Camino, along Traffic Way, are not an allowed use. Instead, it's the restaurant, it's the retail. But those uses are allowed above the ground floor. So I'm actually going to turn this over right now. I meant to do this earlier to our consultant, Genevieve, before I go too far and give you too much information. Genevieve, are you online with us tonight?
I sure am.
Excellent. Wow, your voice sounds so crisp and clear. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. So moving on, so the non-conforming uses, something that was put in place and it was allowed when it was put in place. So the zoning code said it could be there, but no longer is it an allowed use in the zoning district. So on the ground floor in the downtown commercial, this is the medical offices and the ground floor residential gas station. So thinking about that vision and how to best manifest that vision, we have a couple of ideas to present for council consideration. The first would be to kind of think about that grace period, that 6-month grace period for those legal non-conforming uses that are not, the most desirable uses to be on the ground floor. So currently that grace period is a 6-month time period. We could think about reducing that to a shorter time period. Maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's something that just kind of helps inch towards that vision a little bit better. So when we say discontinuance, we mean that it's been a vacant tenant space. The business has ceased. The operational fixtures are gone, so that's been gone for that period of time. The second thing that is another option that council could explore is requiring a change to conform with the zoning code right when a tenant or occupant turns over. So in this option, basically the grace period would go away. And the non-conforming use would really terminate when it becomes vacant or it changes ownership or something like that. This does become a little bit more kind of complicated, potentially a little bit opening up a little bit to legal challenge, just because there's not a lot of precedence of this being done. Generally, you do see a vacancy period to allow for that grace period. So staff is really looking for council to provide some direction on any desired changes to those non-conforming land use standards on the ground floor, just here in the DC zoning district. This wouldn't be, we're not talking about any other non-conforming changes. It's really just focused right here in the downtown. And we will pause there for some questions and discussion on this item.
So we're going to treat this like about 3 different presentations. And so we'll.
And I prefer that we do that, given that this is the only item we have this evening. We'll take the extra time to allow 3 opportunities of public comment, as opposed to just treating it all as item G1. So with that, we're no further presentation on the downtown non-conforming. Then we'll proceed to see if there's any council questions on this item. I'll start on my left, Councilmember Peak.
What are the boundaries to is it Lewis Avenue?
So there's actually 2 different sections in town. So south of.
Okay, I'll just ask my question. What about the houses on Lewis Avenue that are just standalone houses?
Those are non-conforming.
So they're non-conforming. So if there's no tenant, if we do make a change tonight and there's no tenancy for 6 months, say landlord's doing a remodel, then that has to become a site
Residential
clothing
is
store.
a little bit different. It has different protections about it. So it's different than a non-conforming commercial office, for example. That's a certainly different nuance.
Okay, that's not clear to, I think, the public.
Okay.
But that's an important distinction. If it's a house, it's a house. We don't want to lose housing because of this ruling. I think housing is tantamount.
Any further questions? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Daris.
Just, I guess, a quick follow-up. So on first item there, the reduce the discontinuance time for 60 days, that's what we're talking about right here, going from 6 months to 60 days or less?
Correct. And we're just basically throwing out options.
Okay.
This came up as a discussion point. What can we do to accelerate the turnover of non-conforming uses as we move forward, since we're seeing this kind of activity anyway?
Now, since we've had it as, if it's not being used for 6 months, then it reverts, then the non-conforming use goes away, then it has to be current. Reducing it, that's pretty drastic, which I don't necessarily have an issue with that, but are there any legal issues we need to be concerned about, or, or litigation because, we reduced it? And I mean, just what are the implications of something like that?
Well, the short answer is, yeah, there's some legal issues with that. The shorter the turnover period, or the shorter the non-conforming discontinuance period, the more likely there is of a challenge to that. Courts have gone, I think, as short as 30 days for certain types of uses. I know there's a couple cases involving mines, gravel pits, that had a 30-day amortization or shutdown period. But it's really going to depend on the nature of the use and the nature of the type of turnover. But 6 months is pretty well established. The shorter that you get from that, the more likely we'd have to take a closer look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because to me, that seems very, very short. But you also, though, could establish a long-term phase-out as well, correct? I mean, you could say conforming, even non-conforming, but allowed use right now. 10 years from now, you got 10 years notice, and it's going to no longer be allowed. Does that have a legal problem?
No, I've got the sun right in my.
I know.
I'm going to move over
TV,
here.
You have a big stripe across your face.
Yeah. So there is a well-established legal precedent for amortization periods where you give a phase out a period of time. It's based on the reasonable commercial return for a property. We have an existing code provision that deals with that for a particular type of use already. We could certainly look at expanding that to different types of uses as well.
Okay, I'm just wondering about that as an alternative method, although obviously it wouldn't be as fast. When we talk about 60 days, or right now it's 6 months, Genevieve made reference in her comments to something empty and operational fixtures removed. That's not part of the criteria though, right? Because, I mean, if you have a dentist office, you're, unless they're really giving it all up, they're probably going to leave the fixtures. You have a gas station, unless they tear out the pumps, the operational fixtures are still there. That's not one of the criteria.
Yeah,
correct?
it's just a discontinuation of the use. So if there's some
Okay.
indication that the use is being discontinued, and there's intent to do that, either through the passage of time or affirmative actions to discontinue the use, that's what the courts are going to look at to determine whether or not that use has actually been discontinued.
Got it. Now, we separately have, I think, talked a little bit about having incentives as opposed, what incentives we offer. These two options are essentially sticks, correct? Would be a way of characterizing them? Yeah.
Yes, as opposed to carrots.
Okay, got it. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Funk.
Yeah, I wanted to check and see what discussion has been had with regard to this with downtown business owners? And what have we heard from them?
This has not been a topic that we've talked to specific downtown business owners recently. It has been some time. So a few years ago, we've had a lot of these discussions.
Yeah, I remember this coming up in front of council a number of years ago. And one of the concerns that was passionately expressed by folks owning non-conforming businesses was their desire to be able to handle an intergenerational transfer. Do we have any, so that somebody wants to retire and pass this on to their kid, or pass their practice on to somebody who will carry on caring for their patients? If we allow only 60 days, does that give people enough time to arrange for continuation of the business if the change happens unexpectedly? As in, if the landowner, the person expires unexpectedly, for instance.
There's a lot of different ways you can treat this kind of a situation. We wouldn't really nail down a specific date because there's a specific change in business ownership, or there's a death in the family, or there's a transition. When we look at a vacancy, we would really look at the fact that, hey, everyone has moved out. this business is closed and it's been closed for several weeks, then we would mark that date and we would look forward to say, okay, and we'd actually contact the folks to say, hey, what's the situation? So I think that the idea here is we would have a little more oversight on these non-conforming uses, but this isn't a hard and fast rule because it's very difficult to track the timing when something actually becomes vacant and what is that actual day, and are we going to stick to the actual day? We're going to obviously have a little bit of wiggle room. And so obviously we want businesses to stay and be successful and for the transition ability to be there from generational changes and things like that. And I think the city manager wants to weigh in.
I wanted to add, I think I wanted to give a little context because this is kind of a ornament on the discussion tonight. Why is this here? And so we have been approached by a dental office around the Sutton Gardens that may have an opportunity to move, but they were inquiring if there'd be an incentive for that. And so I'm working on that, and I'll bring something to you in June. But we have in the past paid for an auto use to be removed from the downtown, and we may be, if you decide, investing in a small incentive to move out a medical office. And so it got me thinking, if there are uses we desire to transition out of downtown, why wouldn't we consider something like this? And it could be a couple years, and we're not trying to push anyone out right away, as opposed to every time there's a use we kind of want to do something different with, having a financial incentive. And so that's why I asked the council to consider it, because in June, I will be bringing back a program to you that I think could be very beneficial to move some medical uses out to like Morrill Road and other places in the community, not leaving the community. We want them in the community. So that's why I put this on the agenda, because it was an opportunity for you to discuss to see if we're even, is this something we want to put time into or not?
So the action that you're requesting us from Day on this particular item is still guidance to staff.
Yes, and we'd have to come back with codified language to do this, but I wanted to see if there was any will of the council on these things to do that, and we'd bring it back at a future point.
Okay, so there would be an opportunity for folks, business owners, both business owners looking for opportunities downtown and business owners who have businesses downtown, conforming and non, to weigh in on this during the, if with specific language in the development of that process and in that process.
Yes, but I would think that'd be pretty important. I think that would, if this was a policy the council wanted to pursue, we'd want to have conversations with people and bring that information back to you. And if you don't want to pursue it, I didn't want to start having conversations with people to be alarming if I didn't have authority to have it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's sort of a follow-on question, just curious on the 60-day things in terms of how you define it. And I'm glad, Mr. Dunsmore, you pointed out that really the clock wouldn't start until we've noticed that a business is vacant. And then maybe we reach out to them and kind of give them a notice and say, hey, we notice your business is vacant, and so a clock is starting now, so you're aware of that. But nowadays it always takes time to do everything. If somebody new is taking over business, they may have to arrange financing, that sort of thing. Even 6 months might be a challenge for some people. So I don't know that, is 60 days even realistic in any way? I don't think I'd want to go there. It'd be too narrow, but is that even realistic? I know you guys are just throwing it out there for an item of discussion. That was fine.
Again, I think we're just exploring options to try and accelerate the changeover. And so I don't know if it's realistic or not. But again, the idea is that, hey, if someone's doing remodeling, if someone is in the process of moving in and out, those times don't count. We wouldn't look at that kind of a situation. And even on residential, hey, they're doing a remodel, an extensive remodel. That doesn't mean the land use is gone. When someone actually, the tenant is actually gone and the owner maybe has changed and the place is truly vacant and unused and the water and electricity is turned off and there's no activity, and it may take 60 days for that move out to even happen, and that's when that clock might start. So I think when you say 60 days, not the time of when that business owner is no longer open. There's different things that it would occur that I think that staff would evaluate.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, we're going to open it up to public comment on this portion of this item, which is our discussion regarding non-conforming uses in the downtown. So,
Good evening, council and staff. Jeff Oslin once again. I was against the ordinance change when we did it a few years back. I'm still against it. I think there's things to be considered. Um, I think that gas station in the downtown attracts business to downtown. We've made it to where if it burns down, it can't be done. I think if it was remodeled and it fit the downtown better, it would be great. Yes, it's ugly today, but I mean, I've seen some up in Redwood City that match the decor of the city and doesn't look like it's a gas station. No different than the one in San Luis Obispo off of Tank Farm. I think it's a Chevron or a Shell. They put plants on the roof or whatever, and you really don't see it as an eyesore. So I'm not sure 6 months is right. When you talk to the downtown, I think if you're building differently in the downtown area and you're going up, that's one thing. But the other thing that I say about doctors and dentist offices and professional buildings and some offices is Terry Banish has done a fantastic job bringing all these events to the downtown. Those are roads that you're not closing and disturbing people on a weekend because they're not there. It's also more parking, more area for events. So when you push people out of the downtown, at some point, I think we're going to have a breaking point. You can only have so many restaurants in our downtown. We don't have a city of 150,000 people. We don't want to be Paso Robles. They have enough problems in their downtown with parking and everything else. I think you guys need to really consider where this goes. I do know of one medical building where the owner died. There was a partnership, an owner died, and it took months to get financing, almost 2 years to get it through the litigation and everything else. So if that person had to close, then what? Now he's out of a building and out of a profession. I think we really need to look at it. Now, on the positive, if the city is giving and offering incentives for people to move and that's the direction they go, then they don't feel like they're being forced out. I think that's a fabulous idea. But I can tell you, and I'll pick on Mr. Butler on his machines a couple blocks away. The reason my wife shopped in the downtown at a couple businesses is because she had to run down there and pick up ink for me on the fly because nobody else had it. And she discovered a store and bought some things. So I think you have to look at what you're doing. And people come from all over the place for his business to buy old typewriters and antique things. Plus, he's the last dinosaur in the area to continue delivering things and whatever. He's not going to be there forever, but I just think we have to look at it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think that was about 3 minutes, but I didn't see a clock. So can we make sure the next speaker has a clock? Oh, it's on there? Okay, usually it shows up on here too. Okay, thank you. All right, next speaker, please.
Hello, Council. My name is Breanne Barrett. Everybody calls me Breezy. I own Velvet Kitty Tattoo. I just opened up the big pink tattoo shop as mine. I'm also the representative for Downtown Association as well as chamber member. As the downtown representative, we have definitely created an amazing team now where we get together every Wednesday. We meet at chamber first Wednesday of the month and use their space so that we can have Zoom and get everybody in on Zoom. So we're really working at getting participation for the entire downtown area, which I plan on doing the next 2 weeks, is hitting every single business. And, you know, we found out what we had in the bid money. We found out, you know, what we can actually use to beautify Atascadero. And we started planning events whenever there isn't an event in Sunken Gardens. We have planned an event with all of the downtown businesses together. And it's really getting fantastic. Like, we have just built this amazing team. And now chamber, we send all of our stuff over to chamber to put on calendar. So I mean, really what it comes down to is this incentive program, I think would be amazing, because I was complaining about it yesterday, and I don't like to complain. I'm a doer. I want to fix it and I want to make it right, and I want to do the right thing for everybody involved. So, getting, dentist office and medical offices out of downtown area, to me, that's a priority, because when people are shopping and you're walking around and then you've got a whole block that there's nothing on that you can go into. And we're really working on making this place a tourist destination. Atascadero is amazing, and the beach is right there. I'd rather stay here in a hotel and walk around downtown and then drive to the beach and enjoy the sand, but then come back. So, I think you guys are doing it. Like, Atascadero is amazing, but yeah, to get rid of the downtown medical offices and dentists, it's just not there. It's really pointless to have them in a downtown area where we're trying to make it a downtown shopping and partying and enjoying, and a place to go and take your kids and your dog and wander. And I love it, So I think doing an incentive program to slowly weed out and get these other buildings, booming with more businesses would be fantastic. So thank you for listening. I love what you guys are doing, and I'd love to be a part of it.
Thank you for your comments and your participation in the downtown group. All right, any others people wishing to speak on this portion of the item? Okay, seeing that, I'm going to bring it back to council for comments so we can provide guidance to staff. I'm going to start this time on my right with Councilmember Funk.
Yeah, I'm keen on our making a transition over time to have, as our last speaker just talked about, to move some of the more of the medical uses and dental uses out, and so that we have fewer businesses that close at 5 o'clock at night and are, dead to create dead space in downtown when you walk around, particularly in the evening. But 60 days is just, that really makes me uncomfortable, because I think there are too many human situations where you just can't really do it that fast. And while we might be willing to interpret things so that there is flexibility, we're really adding a lot of anxiety into a difficult transition process for many of our businesses. I feel much more comfortable with the idea of an incentive program, where with a modest amount to help people with the expenses involved, we can create win-win outcomes and open up some properties for uses that are more productive to the other businesses around them. So, as far as breaking it off at the point that not allowing transfer to a new owner, again, I understand it, but I'm not comfortable with that. I'm sorry. Okay, item
Referring to
2.
item 2
Of the
here.
2 things that are, we have 2 things in the staff report on page 27 of the 47-page agenda packet. The first is discontinuing the time of where the business is closed to 60 days or less. And I could do 3 months maybe at most. It's not below that. And I think probably 6 months is not an unreasonable time period, for particularly because not everybody can plan in advance when a transition might have to take place. Life just is complicated. And I would rather have us either do something like the mayor suggested, where we have a long period of time where we say, over the course of the next 5 years or 10 years, we're going to amortize something out so that eventually you're not going to be able to transfer this non-conforming use, but currently you can. And that would give people a long off-ramp if they need one. And in the meantime, encourage with some modest incentives to make those transitions happen where we're ripe for it. And I think we've got a winning approach.
Thank you. I would add that I as well feel 60 days is just way too short. There's too many circumstances. And as much as I'd like to see medical offices in particular relocate to, let's say, more along Morrill Road, that's been a longstanding city goal, city council goal, the city goal for decades, that to have those medical offices move out of downtown. The city's never taken any particular action, and I can understand partially why, in the sense that as much as I'd like to see it happen as well, it just feels like we're not playing fair to those folks if we try to reduce this, and almost puts it into a mode of, aha, you're gone, you're empty, we're switching it around. I don't know how comfortable I would feel reducing it from 6 to 4 months even. I think the bigger thing is offering an incentive program. We talk about which uses we would offer that to. But I would be comfortable with at least looking at the idea of a long-term notice that, hey, this, in 10 years, 8 years, something, this is not going to be an allowed use, so plan accordingly. I also think the other piece of this puzzle is that with the general plan amendments we're looking at and allowing taller buildings downtown, it'll make these properties more valuable for other developer to come in and say, hey, Mr. Dentist or whoever, I can offer you more money now because I can make some more money by having some more units on a fourth floor, et cetera. So, part of the problem is with limited height, we limit the value of those properties in terms of people being willing to buy out that sample dentist at a price they can accept. So I think between the incentives, perhaps a long-term deadline, and/or the changes we're making to allow some more density, bring more residents downtown, that will support more restaurants, that sort of thing. So I don't know. I'm not particularly comfortable, and I'm not comfortable at all with just saying, hey, if you close up shop, the next guy can't do what you're doing. That would be definitely too harsh in my mind. So those are my comments. Next, Mayor Pro Tem Daris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, on the 60 days, it did seem a bit shocking when I saw that, to go from 6 months to 60 days. I wouldn't mind seeing it shortened a little bit. I think 6 months gives, we're trying to transition into different types of businesses downtown in 6 months. It may never happen because it could continue to change hands. I don't know if 60 days is fair. I think the mayor kind of hit on that one. And I don't want to, and that's why I asked about the legality of it. The last thing I want to do is find something that's going to, or start something that's going to constantly have us in court because we're not being reasonable with the amount of time that they can hand it over. And I'll go through this kind of quickly. So, on the second one, as far as change of ownership, that one I'm not comfortable with at all. If somebody has a business downtown and they're going to retire and sell the business to the son-in-law, and they say, well, now you can't do that. You got to use the building as the current. That doesn't seem kind of fair either. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that. On the topic of having different types of businesses downtown, Mr. Osmond, I thought, brought up a good point. Kind of disagree that these businesses, you're going to close these roads off because of the events that we have, and now you're going to affect their businesses. Well, I feel like if you have these other types of nightlife type businesses downtown and you're having these events around Sunken Gardens, it's actually going to help their business. I think people are going to come in and they're going to want to visit those businesses even more, or if nothing else, see them for the first time and not know that they were there, and now you've got more business. So I think having the nightlife type business downtown around the Sunken Gardens is a really good idea. I think incentives are a good idea. Mr. Lewis, you brought that up. We talked about that, and I think that anything we can do to transition our downtown to have more business and more walkability around downtown, I think is good. So I think that's pretty much all I have on that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Peak.
Yeah. I think the precedent so far has been that when businesses close that are non-conforming, they typically recently have turned into what we want. Amsterdam was an optometrist. Garden City was Century 21. We're not seeing professional businesses replace professional businesses naturally in the past few years that I can recall. O'Leary and Wallace closed, and that is now next to Teacher Hall. I can't remember what it is now, but it's maybe a hair salon. But I think the market is dictating. We see more like communities around here. A lot of people that have medical offices, they're choosing the modern building with the key fob to go in to rent a space. They're not choosing the colony home that they have to retrofit to turn into a dentist or a chiropractic's office. So I think the market will take care of it more so than us telling this is what we want and this is what we want it to go. I'm more in favor of the incentive approach and letting the market do what it does. I'm a landlord. And if I have a killer chiropractic office on Traffic Way, I don't, but there's a chiropractor on Traffic Way, and that chiropractor decides to leave, and that landlord's like, this is perfect for a chiropractor. Another one wants to come in there. I have no problem saying that might as well. It's the highest and best use of the space. It's already made to be that use. I think that we will see over time Sunken Gardens, even if we say a 10-year cap, I don't even think it'll take 10 years for Sunken Gardens to turn into what everyone envisions it to be business-wise. So first and foremost, the first comment I'll make is that we do have businesses that suffer when we have blockades. Like Malibu Coffee has a sharp drop in business because their daytime, morning time coffee people can't go there. Even if the event's in the evening, the blockades are there for 2 days. So they lose business. Amsterdam might just shut down. Sometimes they shut down on Saturdays if there's an event because they can't get to it. I've seen that. So there's validity to it when there's a business that isn't operating during the day. You have some businesses in downtown that are professional services, like a chiropractor, like a hair salon, like a dentist, where the mom will take the kid over to get a yogurt after their dental appointment, or they go downtown for the appointment and then they stay there. In the middle of the week, there's nothing else like drawing people to downtown. That's why we see businesses on Entrada completely closed Monday and Tuesday. I always crave a bagel on Monday, but I'll go on Wednesday. And I just think if the market's going to dictate it, I'm a big proponent of landowner rights when it comes to like tenancy, because sometimes it's hard with a commercial space to even find a tenant. So I think the incentives for businesses, like we were talking about, throwing around numbers, we won't get into details, of helping people set up a new location elsewhere is a great idea. I think people that are serious about it would be welcome to it. I'm a hard no on change in ownership because that sets a precedence to where in other zones you could have a change in ownership, and maybe I have a warehouse gym somewhere else in town, and all of a sudden if that changes down the road and I'm non-conforming, and then all of a sudden I'd sell the place and they have to move because of this ruling. Because if we do it for one zone, it's going to end up being like, well, we did it then, so we can do it there, and years down the road, it just sets a precedence to be able to do that. So I'm a no for changing in ownership. I'm a yes for what kind of incentives can we make and make this like just a lucrative, quite literally a lucrative endeavor to find a better location that's more suited to maybe the profession. I'm not a big fan of reducing the time. And I guess beyond that, I would just I'm unclear because I think the typewriter and printer is a store. I don't think that's really like a business that is non-conforming. Is it a printing store? The typewriter store? No.
It's a service. I don't think that's a non-conforming use.
It's a store. Yeah. So stuff like it's fine anyway. But and I would just be careful when we're talking about in public, talking about businesses that have been here for a long time, to talk about them in terms of like describing them as businesses we do not want, businesses that are not desired, businesses because there's people that have been business owners in downtown for decades. And the language shouldn't be like, we're trying to push these businesses out of town, out of the downtown, so I just be careful when we're talking about that. At least I'm trying to, because as a business owner, I don't ever want to think that my business is not wanted in a certain area, even if I've been there for a while. But I just think the market's going to dictate it. I'm a no on changing ownership, and I'm a pro landlord. That's based on just being a landlord and not being hamstring.
Right, yeah. So I think we have kind of consensus that, we'd rather do incentives. We don't want to change the 6-month period. And I think, we're looking forward to that. You guys coming back with more specifics for an incentive program, specific, maybe not exclusively, but specifically interested in how it might deal with the dentist's office, medical offices. And I think we could maybe hold off on the idea of the kind of long-term thing, but maybe when we discuss the incentives, if council has desire, we could discuss that again at that time in terms of a long-term, a long-term deadline, if you will. But I think the main thing is to come back with incentive program in June, as you mentioned.
That's what I heard.
And-
So
and
no
I think
change to
there's
current
good-
policy, and we come back in June with a
Right.
program for.
Right. And I tell the public, sometimes, the staff will put some ideas in the staff report to prompt a discussion on our part. It's not that they're trying to push something on us, the council, but they are trying to push us into a discussion, and that's what we want. So, and I'm glad we had the discussion. So, okay, is that sufficient guidance for you, for staff?
Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Then let's move on to the next portion of the discussion.
All right,
Right.
Genevieve, are you on?
I am. Great. So the next section we'd like to discuss tonight are the allowed uses in non-residential zoning districts. So we've already talked about downtown, and we talked about mixed use a lot over the last couple of sessions. So tonight we're looking at the non-residential zoning districts. So two main goals of this zoning code update are really to implement the general plan and at the same time to simplify and clarify the zoning code to make it easier to use. So some of the key big moves for the general plan are really centered around the commercial and industrial place types, including creating a new innovation flex place time that allows a mix of lighter, creative employment uses, entertainment, services, and doing some refinement in the industrial areas to focus on employment opportunities, some lower intensity manufacturing, and some more focus on indoor service related uses. So the general plan place types define both the primary uses of land and the character of those uses. So these new place types correlate with unique zoning districts. The commercial place types districts are concentrated on El Camino Real at major intersections. Businesses are really retail and employment based and serve the day-to-day needs of local residents. The commercial general plan place type translates into two zoning districts, the commercial or C zoning district and the commercial services zoning district or CS. The Innovation Flex place type, like I mentioned, is a new general plan place type, and that's concentrated on El Camino Real with a chunk on the northern end of town and one on the southern end. And this Innovation Flex place type correlates with a new commercial innovation zoning district. And this is intended to really implement that vision of the general plan, provide opportunities for startup businesses, and spaces that can be really adaptable to a variety of uses as workforce trends evolve. The intent here is really concentrating production, design, makerspace businesses in multi-tenant buildings. The industrial general plan place type correlates with the industrial zoning district. That's largely along Traffic Way and Sycamore Road and by the railroad corridor. And these areas allow for more heavy or moderately intense manufacturing and distribution. So as part of the zoning code update, a key change will be consolidating a number of the existing commercial zoning districts into fewer commercial zoning districts to really simplify the code. And this example shows kind of the list of all of the current zoning districts, not all of the areas, because some of those have transitioned into the mixed use districts. But where the proposed commercial zones are, here's the existing zoning districts that would nest within those. So many of these now are going to be consolidated down into fewer commercial districts. So this map shows the four proposed districts: commercial, commercial services, commercial innovation, and industrial districts. And the chart that shows kind of the same thing, just the four. So by eliminating these four largely similar zones, we're able to shorten the whole zoning code, making it easier to use. So within each of these zoning districts, a variety of uses are allowed. You can go to the next slide. So as part of the zoning code update, we reviewed all of the existing land use definitions to provide more clarity, taking out any that had overlap so that so the overlapping definitions were confusing, or separating out unique uses within some kind of broader definitions. And we also added new modern definitions to reflect new uses that we're seeing increasing today and may have a need to accommodate in Atascadero in the future. So in general, the intent was to retain how uses are allowed today for each zoning district, but make kind of minor changes to implement general plan policy. So a few changes of note are identified here and on the next few slides. Blue text means that the definition is a new use, that this wasn't a definition that existed in the code before, and changes are shown in track changes on the right side of the table to show where an allowed use might be changed. So here on this table, an A means it's an allowed use. CUP means that a conditional use permit's required. AUP means that an administrative use permit would be required, which can be processed by staff. So for example, here we heard in previous sessions with council that there was a need to allow kennels in town. And so because this use functions better in industrial and heavier commercial areas than perhaps say in a mixed use area, we've added the allowance here in all of the commercial and industrial zoning districts with a CUP. And the CUP really allows for some additional site-specific standards to be incorporated conditions to address noise and site suitability. We've added animal grooming as a new use, kind of separating that piece out and noting that that's allowed throughout since there's no overnight boarding associated with that. Looking at assembly uses. So there's public assembly. This can be, a banquet hall, a variety of different things. We have 3 new types of public assembly identified in the zoning code. An entertainment facility, it's not listed here in this because we're not proposing any changes. Religious facilities and sports facilities where you're like a spectator sport. Here you might notice some nuance and changes for consistency with federal law about religious uses. Best practice is to show that where assembly uses are allowed, religious assembly uses are allowed. So you'll see some changes that parallel that. General plan policy also really encourages the streamlining of uses that are going to enhance vitality, economic development. And so to that end, a number of uses were added as allowed, including new definitions for new kinds of things like a commercial kitchen, and that could be a catering kitchen or a ghost kitchen. We've added broadcasting studios allowances, indoor commercial recreation like a trampoline place, and allowing it a bar or tavern to come in more easily as an allowed use in the commercial zones instead of a CUP. And then we've separated out some other uses that might need a little bit more oversight, like outdoor commercial recreation. And we've also separated out other things like car washes from vehicle repair because they have very different kinds of needs that can be addressed through specific standards for that type of use. So rather than requiring a CUP or an AUP for that type of use, we'll be adding in some specific standards related to that use in the zoning code. On the next slide. Okay, sorry. There's a lag. So some other changes to note. New uses like battery energy storage systems that was previously not identified in the land use definitions as an allowed use. So it would seem like it was not allowed at all. So we want to make it clear that this use is a defined use. So when somebody is looking it up, they know if it is allowed or if it's not. And so these uses would be allowed with a CUP in the industrial zoning district. With regard to fitness facilities, so these are gyms and yoga studios. They used to be kind of hidden under a definition called amusement services. So that always kind of stumped folks when they were looking for that. And so we've pulled that out to make it really clear. And for smaller gyms, to make them an allowed use, and only larger gyms where you would apply a CUP. In the CI zone, a number of uses are proposed to change slightly to really meet the intent of that zoning district, facilitating uses that really fit that vibe, like nurseries with an AUP instead of a CUP, which is a more streamlined process, and allowing other uses that weren't mentioned or allowed in that area, like a hotel. Next slide. In general, the use changes shown here are really proposed to facilitate a variety of different uses as allowed uses or requiring an AUP instead of a CUP, really targeting, streamlining and making the types of uses that we want to see be able to come into the community more easily through a streamlined process. And at the same time, targeting some of that more intense industrial vehicle repair pieces into the more industrial zoning districts, and then more service and retail in the commercial zoning districts. So I'd like to pause here for questions and discussion, and we do have kind of a bifurcation of the questions and discussion. So I'd like to start with the first part, focusing in on any land use definitions that you'd like to discuss, and then looking at the use tables just for the CS and the I zones, and then we can break and then talk about the remaining two zoning districts.
Okay, thank you. Could you call up just any one of the pages of the table you just showed? Because I wanted to ask a question before we begin asking other questions. There you go. So to make sure I follow this, so because we've created some new zoning definitions here, if, like on this top one, that simply means it was like under CI, drive-through sales and services did require a CUP, we're changing that to AUP.
Exactly.
But you go down to like fitness facility, or no, I'm sorry, no, down to field dealer propane. It says the CUP is crossed out and now it has two blue dashes. Is that to say it's not at all an allowed use in CI? What does that mean?
Yes, so that is accurate. So what we did was where uses, especially in the CI zone, where we're really trying to create that space for, maker uses, the kind of.
I don't want an explanation as to why. I just want to make sure I'm reading the chart correctly. So that if we're going, it was a CUP, now it's two blue dashes.
That means that it is not an allowed use anymore, correct?
No longer, it is not an allowed use in that area. So then you
Correct.
go down to like libraries and museums. There was a red line, which means it was not allowed, but we're saying now it isn't allowed.
Correct.
Okay, because I want to make sure I'm reading, and for everybody else that they understand and reading the chart correctly. So, okay, the way we had this set up was to kind of first talk about definitions. So I'm going to defer to my colleagues, starting Councilmember Funk on my right, regarding the definitions themselves, which there's several pages of in the staff report for the public who is not looking at an agenda in detail.
I have marked most of my things in the usages.
Oh, and I do know that, council members have had a chance to ask, some questions regarding this to staff prior to the meeting, so we don't need to go over all of them. But if there's something you think is important or would like to see changed, then on the definition, that would be what we're interested in right here.
Yeah. Could you clarify the difference between art as a studio and art as a manufacturing process? Because it looks like there is some reference to art under manufacturing.
We're trying to look that one up. I don't recall on that one.
It's under S for studio and M for manufacturing. I was not looking for art under manufacturing.
That is a good point. And the studio one, that was kind of a late add. We wanted to kind of make sure that one was clear. So we might want to, clean that one up and take it out of the manufacturing part and make it clear under the other part.
One assume that like manufacturing might be like sculptures, where you're welding pieces of metal together or something versus I'm painting a piece of canvas in a small studio.
Yeah, and I think some of these uses might still have some level of overlap, because then it lets staff kind of have discretion of scale of use and where that might be appropriate. I'm sure in the CI zone, both would be permissible, whereas the CI zone would have more of a manufacturing allowance. And if somebody wanted to do a pottery studio downtown, that would be okay because we would understand that size and scale would put them in this definition instead.
Okay, so there's some questions of whether those might be combined. Okay, and then what's the scale of activity that you're envisioning under electrical generation and storage facility? Because some of those, like, a battery plant like Morro Bay was looking at, that's like a 600 megawatt operation that can power 500,000 homes for several hours. And other kinds of usages that say that might support a high-speed electric vehicle charging station for several cars, or a small fleet, or that might support a manufacturing process to give them really clean, steady power. That might be the equivalent of 100 electric pickup trucks parking at Vaughn's. So can we get some idea of the scale that we're talking about here?
I'd be happy to speak to this. So, and I think this was something some of the staff at 3CE, our power company, had some questions about, and there were some questions that were raised by others who spun this up a little bit. And so I do want to speak clearly to this, and I have spoke with the staff of 3CE. So what this is, and I think we have to remember, we're talking about, these are allowed in the industrial area. So, and what this is a primary battery storage facility, much like you'd see in Napomo or other places, or a very small version of what was being proposed in Morro Bay, for the storage of electricity to be maintained for sale in the marketplace for other uses. So that would be basically the big, large kind of sea container batteries placed in a spot connected to the grid where power is being stored, and that would be the sole purpose of that. So those are not being banned in this proposal. They're allowed with CUP in the industrial zone. As you think about the CIC and the commercial areas, you could wonder a question: does someone want their pottery place or their clothing store next to a large battery storage facility? I think we think there's some question about that in today's environment. But more so, these are 1 and 2 acre parcels. They're not very large, and so we didn't believe that was an appropriate use in this area, and that's why we're suggesting they not be allowed except for the industrial zone. Now, that said, that's what this definition is. This is for large battery scale things. This is not for a use that's accessory to a business. So for example, if we had a high-tech business that's doing precision manufacturing, and they have lasers, and they want to use, and they need very consistent, very clean power, and on their 2 or 3 acre parcel, they want to put a half acre of a large battery that has fire suppression and other things to power their use, that would be allowed. That is accessory to the business. If a couple businesses wanted to chain together and have a battery on someone's property for the use of those 3 or 4 businesses, we want those businesses. We want to encourage them. That would be allowed. That would be accessory to the business use. And so I want to make that very clear. That is not what this addresses. This addresses a smaller version of Morro Bay or what's in Napomo, and we don't believe that's consistent with the commercial area, nor do we believe it economically pencils out. Now, that said, if 3CE got into microgrids and micro batteries and
Mr. Lewis,
something.
we're just in definitions, right?
Yeah, but I'm
So-
trying to clarify what
No,
this
you
is. and
are,
isn't.
but I think you've answered the question on the definition.
Okay.
Because I don't want to get too far into where we have an excluded member about the desirability of.
I was only going to add, Mayor, that a definition, should a project in the future come at a scale we can't understand today,
Right.
it could always be changed through its own text amendment.
Exactly. But I mean, the key thing is that the definition here is for one that's exclusively a generating thing, as opposed to, it does not include in this definition the ancillary uses for somebody else, as you well described. So I just want to say you and save us from getting a council member too far into a discussion that they're not going to be able to participate. So I want to avoid discussing the desirability here where of each of these. We're just talking about the definition themselves. And I thank you for that clarification. I think you did a good job of clarifying the definition.
And that'll take care of my questions on definitions.
Okay, we'll move on. Mayor Pro Tem Dares, any questions or comments, or not comments, we'll save that for after public comment, but any questions regarding that definitions?
Yeah, just one. There's a suggestion in the staff report on page 18 that to add a definition for a commercial or commissary kitchen, because it's in there and it's sort of blended together with commercial kitchen. What would the difference be and why would we need to do that?
I think the intent of that was that using commissary kitchen in the same, meaning the same thing as a commercial kitchen. So that would all fall under the same kind of definition. Like a ghost kitchen or a commercial kitchen that is like a catering business kitchen. Those would all fall under the same kind of type of use where there is, it's not a restaurant with sit down uses. All would be kind of for pickup.
Okay, yeah, because commercial kitchen as it shows in the grid is that it's allowed in all 4 zoning districts. So commissary wouldn't be any different from that. Okay, that's really the only
Correct.
question we had. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Peak, any questions on definitions?
Not definition specifically.
Okay, all right, thank you. I have under retail restricted, we say stores and shops selling products that may have a blighting or a deteriorating effect upon the surrounding area, may need to be dispersed to minimize their adverse impact. We mentioned specifically smoking, tobacco, vaping products. I wondered about liquor stores, only because in some places, a concentration of them is considered a negative thing. We just not bother because they're so limited in terms of the number of licenses available. It's not realistically ever a problem here.
We do sort of leave that to ABC in terms of how they regulate that density and how they license that.
Got it.
So that hasn't been determined to be, in terms of our local zoning, a blighted zoning.
Sure.
Certainly a comment we can take if council so chooses to have us
I just
explore that.
Wondered why, because that's kind of a class considered, like in bigger cities or something, that's kind of considered a classic sign of blight as a heavy concentration of liquor stores. So, okay, all right, thank you. I have no further questions. Councilmember Funk, do you have an additional?
Yeah, one quick follow-up on the electricity generation and storage. There's a mention in that definition that this does not include solar panels or other accessory electrical generation that is accessory to an approved residential use. Could that definition be expanded to include residential or commercial use?
Yes, and I was just telling staff to make that change. So it says
Okay,
land use.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Good catch. Okay, with that, we'll proceed out to public comment. And this is comment on the definitions that are contained in the staff report.
Thank you, Council. Jeff Oslin. Definition. When you say storage or a way to handle electrical, does that also include these micronuclear power plants as well? And how is that taken into account? That's my only question. Thank you.
Okay, any other member of the public wishing to comment, please approach.
Hello, my name's Lisa Renee Falk, and I'm owner of Glasshead Studio. I teach classes in stained glass, fused glass, and mosaics. And I moved to the area about 7 years ago, and it was really difficult to find space for an art studio. To put it bluntly, I mean, rent is high. So I was pushed out to more of a light industrial area, which I really enjoy because I don't have maybe the looky-loos from the retail and I can kind of get stuff done. But on the flip side of that, I don't have the walk-in traffic like I would if I was downtown. And I have looked at areas down in traffic and Entrada and all that. But like I said, my rent is a lot less in the industrial. So depending on your definition of what you're going to do, you might be pushing out artists who don't have the money to pay rent on a higher retail zoning. So when I saw the list, it said studio work area and not allowing it in the industrial area. And I think that's a big mistake because you know, it's like we're trying to make a living doing our art, and art's not always a priority, which I think it should be. And hopefully, we can do that. So I don't know. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wishing to approach? Okay, seeing none, we're going to bring it back to council. And on your last comment, I'm going to think that we'll save that for, not a part of this definitions piece, but when we talk about what things are allowed in each area, that might be a more appropriate place for us to address that concern. And could staff address Mr. Oslin's hypothetical question?
Yeah, I don't think this addresses that, and that's why we have zone text amendments, so something in the future could be revisited. I'm not sure that local governments have the power to regulate nuclear devices either.
Well, yeah, certainly not to regulate the device. But I can't imagine if somebody said, I want to put one of these, they now make them the size of a suitcase or something, and I want to put one in my business. Maybe that's one of those hypotheticals. If it ever comes up, we'll have to address it then. Okay, let's move on. So no further, I think staff heard our questions regarding definitions, maybe just a little clarification on one or two, but we're ready to move on to the next piece of the discussion, which is the tables in terms of use of, allowable uses by district. So we're going to start with CS, commercial service and industrial, and we'll try to address the question regarding art studios, but we're ready to just go ahead and start with council input on that, correct? No further staff comment. Okay, so we'll go ahead, and I think I started on my right last time. I'll start with Councilmember Peak on my left this time.
Trying to parse my comments.
Okay, we can come back to you if you want to have
There's some rows that encompass areas I can't talk about.
Well, remember, we're only talking about CS and I.
Yeah, I understand, but there's some uses that go across them. So I'm trying to be careful with my words. Can you come back to me?
Yeah, I'll come back to you. We'll start then. We'll go to Mayor Pro Tem Daris. Okay, he's going to pass to, we'll go to Councilmember Funk.
Okay, I've got a list we'll walk through, running through, starting on page 41 and working through in alphabetical order for my comments. We'll start in the C's with caretaker residence and employee unit. That is currently listed as a CUP use. And, I just want to comment in general, I appreciate the staff's attention to how can we simplify this for businesses and make it, while we're protecting the community. That's my real interest here, is to make it easier for people who want to start a business or do a business while maintaining community safety and creating the conditions where businesses are more likely to help each other and less likely to conflict with each other in their uses and customers. So with that in mind, caretaker's residence and employee unit, is there any reason that needs to be a CUP and not an AUP? An administrative use permit, this is a much simpler process where you just go to staff. And they're still noticing and there's still a hearing process, but it's cheaper and quicker and simpler than getting the whole planning commission involved, right?
Correct. I don't believe there's a strong reason that I could give you. I think that's completely at the council's discretion.
Okay. On daycare centers, I see that they're only in these commercial zones listed as an allowed use in commercial, but not in any of the other zones. If a business in one of those zones wanted to have on-site daycare, would they be able to do that as essentially an accessory use?
Accessory uses, if it's not a primary use of that property, are regulated differently. And so, yes, they would be able to do that. And so when we talk about these use lists on here, the thought is those are primary land uses where that's the purpose of that.
Okay, so this allows businesses to add daycare, and of course, there's quite a bit of allowance for daycare in the residential areas, as I recall, right?
Yes, and in the mixed use districts.
And in the mixed use, both. So, but it does keep us from having a large, commercial daycare center in the middle of an industrial area that then would make it difficult for industrial businesses to move in there.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. The electricity we've covered. Horticultural. In the industrial zone, is there any reason that that couldn't just be an administrative use permit? I mean, I can't see why we need to go to the planning commission to discuss where they're going to put their compost bins and that sort of thing. To distinguish between that one is listed as A/CUP. And so for some unknown reason, sometimes it's allowed by right and sometimes it requires a CUP. And the difference is, oh, I see the differences holding on the another page. Yeah, okay.
I believe
Has
the
to do
note
with
there
what?
references
So-
a significant amount of
Okay.
outdoor storage. And so that's why there's an A in a CUP. The larger the CUP would be if there's a significant amount of outdoor use or storage area.
Yeah. I still think, is there any reason that couldn't be handled in an industrial area? I mean, plants, compost, things like that that would be appropriate and otherwise look like a park.
So it could be an AUP.
Yeah, okay. We'll come back to that discussion. Laundromats. Okay, so why are we requiring laundromats or coin-operated laundries to get CUPs in areas where a dry cleaning plant has more of is allowed use? And could we handle the challenges of laundromats with an administrative use permit instead?
That's certainly an option. We see them as different land uses. And when we talk about dry cleaning, we're talking about a dry cleaning service where you simply go and drop off your clothing and you pick it up a day or two later. It's kind of like a retail land use, whereas a laundromat is generally where people are staying there for extended periods of time, hours at a time, maybe doing their laundry, folding laundry. There's a lot of washing machines going at one time. There's a lot of activity day and night. And so it has a different kind of effect on its immediate vicinity. That's the only reason they're a little bit different. Where we place them in a category is completely at discretion of council. To be honest, it's not a substantial or obnoxious land use. And so it could fit in a lot of locations. For example, we have a laundromat in our downtown and it's fine.
Yeah, and a laundromat is the place where you go to put in your clothes and then visit the nearby businesses and get snacks and buy a good book or, whatever, see who's got what, get your refill on at the refillery or whatever, while your clothes are in the washer. Okay, that takes care of that one. Moving along. So now we get to studio and creative workshop. That's what I was asking about. I was surprised to see art show up in manufacturing where I didn't see it. But it seems to me that we could just allow artists, could we just allow that as an allowed use in the industrial zone as well? And artists whose business models involve lots of customer interaction and people coming and going all the time, maybe more of a retail type component would self-select out of the industrial area because it's not going to generate their traffic. Whereas somebody who's, a sculptor or somebody who's fabricating products in fiberglass or metal or glass has a process that's essentially the same as an auto body repair, and could happily be in that zone. Can we?
Certainly, if council so chooses, I think that's certainly an option. Let me just give you some feedback on our thoughts on this particular land use. And first of all, too, just to clarify, where Glasshead Studio is now is in a commercial service district. It feels like an industrial zone. And a lot of our commercial service areas, a lot of our innovation flex areas, they feel and look like industrial zones. They essentially are light industrial zones. So we felt that's where the best fit are for these studios that have a roll-up door and there's people coming and going. And maybe they're just solely making things and there's no customers going, and that's fine as well too. Whereas the industrial zone is this different zone, and we only have a little bit of industrial in our community, and it's out on Traffic Way, it's out on Sycamore, and it's generally these very large properties where you've got very intensive activities going on. Certainly this land use could be allowed there. It's fine. There's no issue with it. There's no compatibility issue with it. But we placed it in those other three districts for that reason: the commercial service, the commercial innovation, the commercial zones, just because that's where they tend to gravitate. That's where they tend to have the best fit. And those are essentially light industrial zones as well.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that strip of land on Traffic Way where you have all of those really narrow, really shallow lots between Traffic Way and the railroad. And I'm trying to figure out why would a sculptor or somebody doing artwork not fit next to Salty Dog Motorcycles or the upholstery shop or other things that are in those, I presume, are allowed uses in that industrial area in those smaller properties.
So there is
Yeah.
another land use, artisan manufacturing. We're looking at that now, so it kind of overlaps. So maybe it could still be allowed anyway. Actually, it is allowed. So I think that our definitions are kind of overlapping. This one's more about the creative studio, but there's a artisan manufacturing that would fit. So I think it's already taken care of. Maybe we just need to clarify that. Good
Okay.
discussion.
Okay. And then temporary events. Is there any reason that temporary events need to go to the Planning Commission?
So, so the little footnote on that one is only if they are sort of an extraordinarily long temporary event where they need more than 3 days of setup time and more than 3 days of tear down time in addition to their event days. Doesn't necessarily need to be a conditional use permit, could be administrative use permit, but those longer type events do require some level of conditioning to ensure that the site is vacated and restored properly.
Can you give me an example?
I think we had the circus come to town once and they stayed for 2 weeks or so. And so there was some site restoration that had to happen with that and some traffic control.
The ice rink. Ice skating
Yeah,
rink?
the ice rink was here for a long time and didn't feel temporary, but it was.
Okay, thank you. That'll do me.
Thank you. On that though, the temporary events, I mean, I understand a longer term thing, but a CUP as opposed to an AUP, I would think that an AUP would be adequate in this. And I want to ask the general question, maybe for the public as well as that is, A is an allowable use. So I by right as a business wanting to do that function can expect that if I come in this zone and it says A, I can do that. But an administrative use permit means I come and Mr. Dunsmore as the community development director holds a little hearing and he sets kind of the conditions and grants the approval. A CUP means it has to go to the planning commission. But in terms of this process, we're looking, as Councilmember Funk noted, and I think others agree that we want to make doing business easy in Atascadero, generally speaking. But an AUP is appealable, whether it's if Mr. Dunsmore said no, the applicant could appeal that to the planning commission. And if the planning commission says no, an applicant can appeal it to city council. But by the same token, if Mr. Dunsmore approves something, these are noticed. There's a yellow notice out in the community physically. Neighbors could appeal an AUP approval. So if Mr. Dunsmore said yes, and all the neighbors go, "What do you mean you allowed a fireworks display or I don't know something, loud, a dirt bike competition, over my backyard fence?" The neighbors could complain about your approval to the planning commission, correct? So I mean, just to make sure everybody understands the distinction between an AUP and a
Yes.
CUP.
And there's one more thing that I would like to mention with that. On occasion, when there's a very significant topic for an AUP that generates a lot of public controversy, the director may also refer that to the planning commission, bump it up a level.
Got it. And so people understand, I mean, an AUP costs less for an applicant to go through because you don't have to generate a report for the planning commission.
It does cost less, Jerry.
So we're trying to make it easier where we can. So in that respect, I would just think that a temporary event, maybe an AUP would be adequate, but we'll leave that for comment time. I just wanted to clarify that. I'm going to go back down this way. Mayor Pro Tem Daras, do you have any questions or comments?
Run through a quick here with just more or less why am I seeing it the way it is? Eating and drinking establishments, we've got allowed in all 4 districts. Is that typical in an industrial? I mean,
It's always good to have food available everywhere. People are working in industrial zone.
okay.
If they decide to open up a pop-up food venue or if there's a permanent food truck parking spot, It's okay.
All right. I mean, I think that's fine. I just didn't, I mean, I'm looking at some of these ones that aren't yet, but okay.
Would Tin City be an example of that? Where essentially you have an industrial area, things happening, but
Yeah.
you also have,
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Instructional services not being allowed in the commercial services. What types of things, I mean, give me an example of an instructional service. And it seems that commercial service that might be someplace where, like, depending on what it is, it could be allowed.
Like Mathnasium? Mathnasium
Oh,
over in the,
yeah.
next to Panda was there?
I think we need to look at that one a little more closely.
Yeah, the intent of that one is kind of tutoring centers, kind of the mathnasiums, the Kumons. It could also be like a driving school. It's really kind of a hybrid kind of service officey kind of feel that tends to have kind of chunks of people coming and going.
And I mean, and that feels like it's not appropriate in a commercial service area? Is that?
So the commercial service area is not a huge area too. So I think the intent too is to make sure that there's adequate area for the uses like vehicle repair and other things that are really appropriate in those areas. So we don't want to necessarily open the door too wide.
And I'll add to that just a little bit in that, like Genevieve said, those areas are kind of auto service and, tire changing kind of businesses. And if you had a school with some level of classrooms come in that needed some level of quiet and there was some auto use that needed a use permit, they could then sort of challenge that. So we are trying to look for some level of use compatibility to make sure that those service oriented uses have a place where they can go, where they won't be incompatible with a neighbor.
Well, you bring up a good point. And what if it was an auto mechanic school or something? They're going to want to be in the.
I think that might be, we might be able to look at that differently based on its scope of use and put it into a different definition.
Okay.
Fortunately, we do have a little bit of discretion for very unique uses, which is why we have this large definition list and we can, tweak unique things that come in.
And I think this is going very well. I think you guys have done a great job breaking this down as detailed as it is. The next one I have is on the retail general 50,000 square feet or less. Now, I mean, I'm trying to think industrial, it would seem to me there's something, I mean, whether it's construction type stuff, whatever, why it's not allowed at all in an industrial area. I know we have very little industrial and you don't want to take it up and stuff like that. But is there any, I wouldn't want to limit something that maybe would be more appropriate out there and not have a space for it, or have it wind up being in some place that's less appropriate.
That's a good point. There are other definitions where that would fit. So building materials and hardware sales have its own classification outside of the retail general, and those are allowed in the industrial district, as are contract construction services. Those are also allowed in the industrial district. So really what we're trying not to see there is like a Costco, right? Or like a large format retail taking away the industrial space.
Well, that one does say less than 50,000 square feet, but yeah, I understand that. Okay. And I'm sorry if I missed, because I was reading, if it was discussed on the studio and the creative workshops not being allowed in industrial, because that was mentioned by one of our speakers here. So did we get
so what we have is the manufacturing artisan that also allows similar type uses. So that would give an avenue for allowing those types of studios there.
Okay. All right. That's good. And then I had one more. Vehicle service stations not being allowed in industrial. That I know the service station is like a gas station, but it also, according to the definition, where some work can be done on cars, and it just seems like a gas station, service station, tire changer would be ideal in an industrial area.
An auto mechanic is allowed in those industrial zones and someone who does transmission repair and those repair services. But I think our definition for service station is truly a gas station.
Yes.
They may do some light work, but our industrial zone is far off of our sort of, heavy traffic areas. It's out there. So that was the intent there, to leave that out.
Okay, I guess that makes sense, because gas stations today are different than they were when we were kids, when they were actually true service stations.
Now
When
they're
you-
just a
Now it's just gas and
convenience
anymore.
store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on to Councilmember Peak, I wanted to add a question to the one Mayor Pro Tem Dara's brought up regarding why we wouldn't allow large retail. And then you answered that we do, we have this separate category of building materials and hardware sales. What about landscape materials? I think right over here we have 43 Holding next to hay and feed, and I go there, get, loads of DG and road base, and they also have what's left of Moore's Nursery there, selling plants, and that seems very appropriate for an industrial area. I mean, it seems like a decent use. I don't see landscaping materials listed as a separate,
We have two other ones I think
Under
that would fit
horticulture.
under. We also have farm equipment and supplies. So there's potential for that. But there's also under the horticulture specialties. That's kind of the nurseries and the supplies.
Okay, thank you. So that covers. All right, thank you. Councilmember Peak.
Yeah, just a couple here. Number one, religious facilities. I'm unclear why they would all be CUP in the two zones that I'm allowed to speak about. Why it wouldn't just be AUP?
So we have there is RLUPLA, the Religious Land Use Act, a federal act that says you really want to treat them the same. We're even more generous in residential zones so religious facilities are allowed in a lot of residential zones as well. And so again, trying to think about matching how we're treating public assembly with religious assembly. Those weren't allowed uses before. And so we're wanting to be cognizant of not over saturating those types of uses and just making it super easy to go anywhere, but just actually matching how easy it is to go with public assembly in general, and match that, because that's really the type of use it is assembly.
So there's a CUP involved when like a religious facility wants to open in a residential zone?
No, it is a allowed use, I believe. I'll have to pull up those, the allowed uses for residential zones.
Yeah, we'll get to that list in a moment. I don't have that one in front of me either for the residential.
I thought
But
we-
again, just
We
keep,
did impose the CUPs on religious things, especially on expansions. I mean, many of them in our community existed prior to incorporation, but for example, if somebody, the one up on Portola wanted to expand, there were conditions on that, and especially when it comes to religious institutions might use, loudspeakers for outside assemblies. Some of them have sporting events, youth basketball, whatever. When those are outside, they might affect the neighbor. So those are maybe not directly their religious, piece of what they do, but those organizations and institutions can have effects on the neighbors. So, and I believe we have imposed conditions in some cases.
yes, they're a significant assembly use. It's not the religious factor. It's
Right.
all the assembly uses have a significant traffic and pedestrian and sound, and a significant change to where they're at. And that's the reason they're at that CUP level. What we have done with this new zoning, is added them into more districts
Mhm.
than we have today. But we still simply have maintained the requirement for a CUP, which we've had previously.
It just seems like, I'll just move on. It doesn't seem like there's much interest in that one. So in terms of the artisan manufacturing in industrial and commercial service, I'm assuming that would be someone who, and the way I was reading it, and we know we're not talking about definitions, but I'm in favor of having that in every district. So that's the difference between that and a studio craft. The artisan manufacturer can be making it and selling it on site. Like we'll just use Dale Evers because he's not in the city. I can use him as an example. Like it was welding sculptures in an industrial zone. People can walk in and buy whatever sculpture that he's got there, if he was at Atascadero. So that satisfies kind of a lot of that. Other thing is the contract services outdoors being CUP for industrial. I'm not really sure why that's the case when we have our industrial areas are so remote. I mean, someone's milling lumber outside of their warehouse, or they're building mobile solar trailers and welding outdoors in those areas. It seems like the perfect place to just have a big old A slapped on that category. So contract services outdoors, seems like we should have less restriction in the industrial zone in terms of who can go there. And then the last one I have is just sales lots for commercial service. I'd like to see that be a CUP. Sales lot. If you want to sell like.
Keep in mind, the one you previously mentioned, it only requires a CUP under footnote 1, where there's a great deal of outside storage.
No, that is outdoor. Contract construction services outdoor is a CUP under industrial.
Well, no, it says A/CUP.
No, it doesn't. It says CUP right underneath it. Yeah.
Indoor.
Yeah. That's indoor and outdoor would be the slash if
Yeah.
that was that one.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
I just think, yeah, that, and then sales lot CUP. I know we have a small for commercial service, and I can't speak to the other two zones. So I just think sales lots, they're not always cars. They could be mowers, they could be trailers, they could be, and we see that in some mixed use, and that was brought up during mixed use, where the mixed use zones have a trailer dealer, they have a mower dealer, they have, in our commercial service now, we have a place like Mid Coast Mower and Saw. I'm not sure that's considered a sales lot. I doubt it is, but there are things on the lawn for sale. But so there's businesses along there that could be considered sales lots in the future, and I don't think they have any problem with that.
Okay, very good. Anything else? Okay, we'll save that because we'll discuss that when we come back, for what we actually want to change. Let's open this up to public comment. See if any member of the public would comment. And remember, we're talking about the CS and which is commercial service, and the I industrial zone. The allowed uses in those two. So
Thank you again, Council Jeff Oslin. Clarification in that industrial zones, could you have a veterinarian clinic and could you have a crematory? Just crazy question, because I know we zoned them out of different areas, and some areas are still grandfathered in, but just curiosity if, down the line somebody wanted to move there. The other one in the industrial, I just want to make sure, I know it was brought up for food and beverage, but somebody could in that industrial decide to share a space or something with light industrial and then have a backyard with a brewery and nightlife at night or something of that general. Thank you.
Okay, any other speakers on this item? Okay, and if not, seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for discussion. And I would like to clarify in relation to that question, kind of like I said, over in Tin City, you have, which is under the county's jurisdiction in Templeton area, you have some industrial uses, and then you also have, some breweries and with food, et cetera. And in our industrial zone, we would allow that, if I read this correctly.
Yes, but our commercial innovation or our innovation zone is generally designed for that, because it's like sort of the roll-up door zone. So that's what we want to kind of pre-create for that.
Right, understand it. But if I mean somebody in the Sycamore Industrial Park, you wanted to do something like that in one of those spaces,
Yes.
that would be an allowed thing.
Yes, they could do that. And Mayor, if I may, if I can go back a bit on the contract construction services question, I think that
Yes.
Councilman Peak had on that. That land use, contract construction services, the definition of that one is simply an outdoor storage yard where there's pipes, piles of gravel, piles of soil, a series of trucks, backhoes. We've had huge storage yards set up for that particular land use. So it's a very there's no one working there. There's nothing being sold there. It's simply a large outdoor storage yard of materials to be used by a private contractor. That is why it's a CUP. It's generally been a land use that's been very um, blighting, should I say, challenging to locate. And it needs to have the right setting, surroundings, conditions put to it.
In regard to that comment, though, I mean, we look at something as you described, it doesn't generate a lot of jobs. It doesn't generate any sales tax. You referred to it as blighting. I don't know. I mean, I guess if you had to look at it out your back door, it's not super attractive. But on the other hand, it's the kind of function that has to have a place somewhere in the city because, contractors do have, need a place to store their backhoes and a place to pile up, road base, et cetera. And in that sense, it supports jobs because, it enables businesses to do their business elsewhere. So it's one of those things, it doesn't sound very attractive either physically or from a, standpoint, and maybe from the city, but we have to, all businesses that's, support other businesses, jobs, et cetera, in our community need someplace to go. So, and I think sometimes people forget that. It's like, well, we don't want that. We don't want that. Well, those things have to go somewhere.
Absolutely, they do. And that's why it's there as as a use, is there as an allowed use, but still a conditionally allowed use. But again, up to the council. I just wanted to describe our thinking on that and why it ended up as a CUP on there, but happy to take your comments and revise accordingly.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I wanted to go back and then, Councilmember Peak, were you suggesting specifically that of changing something from CUP to A or CUP to AUP or on that?
On that one specifically, yes.
And that's on the construction services outdoor.
I think I would be okay with it being up to staff to approve it without going to planning commission. I just think that when you have something like what you were just discussing, and you bring it to a public meeting where people, there'd be a lot of roadblocks where, it's just if someone wants to use the land the way they want to use it, and then it goes into a public hearing, it just becomes more of a process for someone who just wants to store some rocks and a tractor on their industrial property. I just think it becomes like too much of a process.
Well, yeah, so to be clear, an AUP is a public process. I don't think in many of our AUPs held by Mr. Dunsmore are very well attended, but it is a publicly noticed and a publicly open process. It just doesn't involve
the planning commission
and a full-blown staff report to planning commission. Therefore, the cost is way less to the applicant.
Mm-hmm.
But if the neighbors see the yellow card posted there, they go, huh, storage yard.
Mm-hmm.
They're free to come to Mr. Dunsmore's hearing and, say, I don't want that out in my backyard or what have you.
Okay, well, then I would like to change my opinion to full A on that then, because I was under the impression that it was planning commission's public hearing, anything less than that was not. So that just shows my ignorance on it.
Thank you. Any other specific suggestions from council members on something they want to see changed in the CS or I tables? Councilmember Fong.
Yeah, I think pretty much all the ones I asked about. I'd like to see caretakers unit drop to an AUP. I'm comfortable with the change that Councilmember Peak has requested on contract construction services, although I'd also be comfortable if it's an AUP. We don't have, daycares are fine. On horticultural specialties, I'd suggest in the industrial area that be an AUP. That's your landscaping materials sales yard.
An
A or a
only with the
CUP,
CUP
depending,
for the
a
one.
CUP depending, A or an AUP,
Okay, so
and
gotcha.
rather than A or a CUP.
A or AUP.
If it's a really big outdoor storage, let them go to staff and get, get some guidance on it, but let's keep it simple. The laundromats, I would like to change them in the relevant zones that we can discuss right now to from CUP to AUP. People got to wash their clothes. I would like to see studio and creative workshop be allowed as an A use in the industrial zone. And people can, studio / creative workshop. I know that there's some overlap with the manufacturing process, but I still think the point is well taken that we need to keep, we have some of these industrial spaces that are smaller, they're on traffic way, they're, going to be suitable for an artist or a small group of artists, and, we need to get those guys a decent break, and that there's no problem with it, that I see. I don't think that we're going to have a large art colony taking over the back 40 of Hay and Feed. So we're good. The tattoo and body piercing services are requiring an AUP right now. I can't imagine why you need an AUP for that in the industrial zone if somebody wants to put their body piercing there. Or frankly, in the in industrial, see, in the flex zone, either one. Or flex zone we're not discussing right now, but I'll come back to that.
You're suggesting that those AUPs become
A instead of
AAs?
AUP, yeah. And on temporary events, I propose that those be either A or AUP as opposed to A or CUP, because the larger events, the reasons that the staff explained that we would want to have a CUP are about technical challenges in traffic and restoration and all that stuff. And why are we going to give that to the Planning Commission? Let's let staff handle it.
Okay, go ahead.
If I could make one clarifying point about the AUP process, back in February when we talked about presenting a slight change to that, while today it is a public meeting, we did present back in February that when you see the final draft, a proposal that the AUP process would change a little bit so that when staff does their review, they would send out a notice and we would only hold the hearing if it's requested by the notified parties or by some member of the public. So it's likely that those meetings will shrink moving forward in an attempt just to streamline the process.
Understood. I recall the discussion now that you mentioned it, but I mean, the key part of that being that, neighbors will still be notified. There'll still be a physical notification at the site.
Correct.
So, we're just not going to hold hearings that nobody shows up to. We're going to hold a hearing. So the notices will say, if you desire a hearing, contact community development.
Correct.
Right. So I think, I mean, I'm glad you pointed out that change, but I think it still gives the public the opportunity to comment. So thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Daris.
Thank you. On the horticulture specialties, obviously I'm reading this in ornamental plants, so that means flowers, house plants and whatnot. And it occurred to me, I'm not sure where in this, under what definition would cannabis fall? And how does that, and I'm not sure if I know where that's at.
Well, I asked this question earlier, and I think the answer is because we don't currently allow it, it's simply not included in there. If we ever chose to allow it, we'd have to put it somewhere.
Well,
is that
well, we've got some, don't we have some things in here that we just simply show no, I don't know if there's anything in here that has not allowed across all four, but isn't that something?
We have a separate section on cannabis. Right now, we do allow for a testing lab with a use permit, and I think we allow for non-storefront delivery services. And they're in a different chapter than these guys, so
okay,
it's not on discussion tonight.
All right, thanks.
Okay, all right, good question then. Okay, so I don't have anything to add what my colleagues talked about. I would make, comment on a few of them and ask, did staff capture all of those suggestions as we went along?
Thank you, yes.
Okay, I'm going to go back, Councilmember Peak. I did want to comment. I feel good about those changes, and especially when we're changing a CUP to an AUP. And again, not personally a fan of tattoos, but I think they should be allowed. People like them. People seem to like them, and there's no reason to require an AUP. And I'm glad that you brought up the temporary events. And I would, in terms, Councilmember Peak, your suggestion to make the construction services an A, You're referring only to the industrial zone, correct? Okay. I kind of would have gone to AUP, but I can live with A if my colleagues want to make that simply an allowed thing in the industrial zone. So you had another one you wanted to add, though?
Well, yeah, I kind of snuck it in during the question part, but if there's any interest in a CUP in the commercial services for sales lots, I just think of some of our lots in this area, particularly like North County Propane or a lot like that, or somewhere that wants to maybe sell tractors or sell equipment. I just think a sales lot, we shouldn't rule it out in a commercial service. If we're going to have vehicle service in commercial service, then we should allow, or at least give the ability to petition to allow like a sales lot of any kind in commercial service.
And so the intent of the sales lot is a little nuanced. The definition explicitly doesn't include vehicle sales or farm equipment supplies. Those are both under different categories. This is more of a space that can be used for like a swap meet. So I think it may already be addressed under vehicle sales and farm equipment and sales.
I think of a swap meet as a non-permanent establishment. This says permanent establishment for outdoor sales of items used or new.
Yeah, not including vehicles or farm equipment.
777.
Yeah.
Cleanse repair. Like stuff like that. I mean, you could sell trailers, anything. I'm not going to die on this hill. I'm just thinking that it's hog tying potential business.
I think the thing is on that, I guess in a lot of people's mind, it would depend on what's being sold, perhaps. But it's a good point about you look at like Glenn's Repair. Is that a sales lot or is it just a retail business? I mean, it seems like it's just a retail business because they rent things, they sell things. I'm not sure if staff has any further comment on that item. Or what would be the harm of having it as a CUP in the CS zone?
I don't think there's a harm from doing that. If it's a CUP, then we can have discretion on
Okay.
things that could happen there.
Are you okay with adding CUP to the CS category for sales lots? Okay. Yeah, got it. Okay, I did have just a generic question. It's something Councilmember Funk brought up earlier about like businesses that want to have on-site daycare. You talked about that being an ancillary use. If I'm a business though, and I look at my business as an allowed use in where I'm proposing to do it under this zoning, under this table, but I do want to have some ancillary uses, whether it be a battery storage or it's daycare or it's this or that. How do I know what is potentially going to be allowed in the terms of an ancillary use, or do I just have to come and ask? And do we have a policy in general, like on-site daycare for businesses, because that's something in general we want to encourage, but do we have that codified anywhere?
We do. We have a discussion on accessory uses. Not sure where that's going with our new code, but it certainly is something we have thresholds on in terms of the floor area. Oftentimes we've used in the past less than 50% of the floor area, sometimes less. I forget where our current code is going with that, or whether
That's okay. I don't need to get into specifics. I just want to make sure that
yes,
there's a point of reference a business could go to and get those questions answered. So we don't need to get into it tonight. So okay, thank you. So you have our suggested changes. I think we had concurrence and consensus up here on those. So I think we're good to go, right? This is sufficient for you. Okay, you have one.
I'm sorry, I just noticed this last one, and I apologize again if somebody mentioned this and I missed you guys talking about it. The recreational vehicle park, not allowed in industrial. I know we had one that was applied for about a year ago or so, started to go and then it failed. But why not have? I know like that place on Traffic Way was used for that, and it's probably not the best.
No, that's storage, not a park.
Well, I mean, a park. I'm thinking of parking your vehicle. Okay, so, all right, I'm just reading this wrong then. So a park as in was going to go over by Del Rio.
Right.
Okay.
In terms of
never mind.
lodging. Yeah, that's a lodging facility or a hotel,
Okay.
motel
All
type.
right. I'm just looking at it as parking your recreational vehicle. Thank you.
I did the first time I looked at it, I did as well. Okay, I think we're good then on this, and we will proceed to the C and the CI zone discussion. And Councilmember Peak, you.
I'm recusing myself of my interests in both those zones.
Okay, thank you. You obviously can listen downstairs. I believe you can speak as a member of the public if you desire on this item. And the only thing after this is council committees and reports. So we will see you for that. Okay, thank
2
you.
minutes stretch break?
Yeah, let's take
Or
a
just
stretch
get,
break
you
while
know,
Councilmember Peak uses himself,
some
and
water.
let's make it
Thanks.
fairly quick. It's 8:04. Let's take a 6-minute break and be back in our seats at 8:10. Okay, I believe it is 8:10. We said we would reconvene, yes. And so we are going to reconvene. We have only 3 council members, so we better all agree. Um, and we're going to move on to our discussion of C and CI, that is commercial and commercial innovative areas. Now, because of the lengthy discussion we already had, I think, we probably, I hope council members don't have any questions. I'm going to see real quick if they have questions. Then what we'll do is let's go out and see if we have public comment, and then we'll come back to see any comments council members have or any specific changes they'd like to make in these 2 zones. So any member of the public wishing to speak on this, please approach. Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. And again, some of the changes we suggested may also apply to C and CI zones, but let's just start and see what comments you have, either any clarifying that you want to add those as well. You don't need to go over each one, but if you think the changes we discussed in the last thing also apply to C and CI, or if you want to add anything else. So I'll start with Councilmember Funk.
Yep, there we go. I would add on the contract construction services, we made that change in the industrial area only, and I would not be keen on changing it in any other zone.
Understand.
Okay, and the horticultural specialties, I asked for that to be changed in the industrial zone, but I don't think we necessarily need to change it in the other zones. A couple of the other zones are already A/AUP. So I think it's okay with that one change.
But it does under C say A CUP. You don't want to make that A AUP?
Well, in the commercial district, I'd be okay to make it AUP. I think what we're talking about with those businesses is somebody making sure that you cite the compost bins appropriately so that it doesn't look ugly and interfere with other businesses. And ugly is always in the eye of the beholder. If you love plants, that compost smells great, right?
Say, or in the ears or nose of the beholder.
Yes, that too. Yeah. So, but I'd be okay with changing commercial to an AUP, A/AUP instead of A/CUP.
Okay.
Good. Thanks, Mayor. That's a good catch. Laundromats, AUP across the board for those areas where it's currently a CUP. And we left it as a allowed use industrially, or at least that was my intent. And I think with the others we've covered, we want to be the change in studio and creative workshop was only allowed use in the industrial because it was already an allowed use in the others, so there's no change that's needed there. Yeah, I think that does me.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Dara. Is anything you'd like to add? Okay, and in which case, then how do you feel about the suggestions made by Councilmember Funk?
I'm good with them. I think they're fine.
Okay, I as well can live with those changes you suggested, and I don't have any other suggested additional changes, so.
I wanted on the allowed use for the tattoo and body piercing in the
Right,
yeah.
we'll
We'll make them A across the board.
make them across
Yeah.
the board, correct.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, does staff have anything they want to comment on or any concern about those suggested changes?
Could I just
No
ask for
concerns.
clarification on the caretaker units?
Yes.
Was that just a change to industrial zone, or were you looking
No, that was across the board.
for?
Right, and that was to make that AUP?
AUP. Change it from CUP to AUP.
Yeah.
I mean, staff can handle whatever technical thing needs to be handled, and if somebody needs to live on site,
Right.
we should make that possible.
Right, so it would apply to these two
Yeah.
zones we're discussing now.
Yeah.
To make it an AUP. Okay, I think we are good. Staff, you're good with that guidance?
Very good.
Okay, all right, thank you. With that, we can invite Councilmember Peak back up because we are ready to move on to our next item, which is our council announcements and committee report. So I will begin on my right with Council Member Funk.
I think we have one more before we call him back. I think, what do we have?
Yes, we have the Commercial Innovation District.
Discussing both C and CI right now, and that our comments pertain to both C and CI.
Yes, thank you. Development standards are next.
Oh,
The
development
development
standards.
Oh, okay.
Wait, I'm sorry, developments.
That's the chart on page 20.
It's going to
of
be
your
really
packet.
quick. Don't worry.
Okay,
Which page?
Page
Page
20
20
of your
okay,
packet.
right, because that pertains specifically to CI, correct?
Yeah,
I'm
there's a
sorry.
chart that had development standards. on
Yeah,
it.
We have
got
a little more presentation to pop up.
it. Okay,
Oh, okay, I missed that.
so yes, page 20. Oh, go ahead.
Great, thank you. So the purpose of this district, we've talked about it already, really fostering that space for production and design, maker spaces to thrive. Go ahead to the next slide. We've got some images of what that might look like. The vision for this zone is really to have that maker production identity and foster those kinds of uses. Visually adaptable frontages. So just kind of looking at the map of where the CI zone lives in town, there's two parts. This is the northern part, and the existing land uses are shown here. So this is actually what is on the ground today. And so when you turn this map on, you see it's really kind of a mix of industrial, commercial, a little bit of vacant and residential thrown in there as well.
I'm
And so
not
we'll take
seeing a visual.
We can see it on page 23, but the public won't be able to see
Yeah,
it
the
on
public can't.
screen.
So,
Go ahead.
no, I'm
keep
not sure
speaking
that.
to it, though.
I'm not sure the map on page 23 is what she's referring to. Is it?
She's referring
Oh, okay.
on the map on page 23. But go ahead and please keep
Okay,
talking to it.
sorry,
Staff
thank
can
you.
try to get
Okay.
it up on the screen.
Sure thing. So we're taking just kind of a Google Street View drive down the corridor to kind of put us kind of where so we're familiar with the area. And the uses along the area really quite mixed throughout, but some of that light industrial and then kind of mixing of the uses as well. Here's the south side of the CI zoning district. This is the area that is included. And then when we turn on the map for the existing land uses, we see that this is, again, a mix of uses, more commercial and some industrial mixed in here as well. And taking a quick drive down the corridor, we see the uses starting at the north, or this is kind of the northern end of the southern part with a mix of uses and a mix of development types too, as well as we drive along the corridor, and ending near the southern end with vacant and uses that seem to kind of align with the commercial innovation vision. So thinking about the development standards that will facilitate that vision, we've drafted some standards that are really intentionally kind of basic. We don't want to make it too complicated. We really just want to focus on those key items that can support adaptability of structures moving forward, and making sure that we're being flexible. So to that end, the setbacks are really flexible. The requirements are really just linked to those where street trees are required. And if the parcel is adjacent to a residential zoning district, they'll have some extra setbacks. And then we think about where is outdoor storage occurring? We don't want it to be happening right along El Camino. We'd like it to happen behind the buildings. So really not allowing fences right up front against the property, but instead pushing them back with the outdoor storage behind the buildings, and really encouraging any new development to push buildings closer to the street. And then ground floor ceiling heights are an important one here to allow for that adaptability. We do kind of want a forklift to get in and out, some roll-up doors there, and allow that hybrid industrial and commercial use to occur. So one of those key features is a requirement for roll-up doors. You don't have to install a roll-up door, but the building should be designed to facilitate this type of development at a later point in time. So we really want to be able to make sure that those types of uses can allow access into the interior spaces. And then there's one kind of modest requirement for transparency when you're looking from the primary street. Largely, this is El Camino and on most of these parcels, to have some transparency. So this is glass windows or doors, and making up 20% of the street facade. So these kind of standards are really intended to help the vision that's already manifesting with Barrel Creek really come to fruition. So we see that here's another example of not a local industrial building, but how it might transition over time into a hybrid, more retail makerspace development with a lot of different types of uses. So really setting in place the standards that are pretty basic, but would allow this type of vision really to get implemented. And I think I did that in less than 5 minutes. So ready for questions and discussion.
Okay, thank you. I have a question regarding, well, one, I want to clarify for the public. When we say minimum lot size 2 acres, that's for any property that's larger than 2 acres. We wouldn't allow that to be subdivided below 2 acres because most of these lots, existing lots, are already smaller than 2 acres, correct?
That's right. And it doesn't, that wouldn't prohibit them from being developed like that. And it wouldn't prohibit someone even subdividing down smaller if they came in with a development plan for what they want to do.
Got it. Because when I first saw that, I thought, wait, most of these lots that we're talking about are already much smaller than 2 acres, and that explains the rationale. The floor to ceiling ground floor height, 16 feet. Now, we discussed that issue somewhat at length previously in some other areas. We're in a previous discussion, and we had 16 feet, 15 feet, 14 feet, 12 feet, and we narrowed it down to a couple. But I thought we narrowed it down more to 14 feet. What did we do? Because 16 seems like a lot. I assume that would also only be applicable to multi-story buildings? Or are we saying if somebody builds a 1-story building, that you want it to be 16 feet?
We had that discussion with our mixed-use districts, and we did decide on a couple different ceiling heights on varying different mixed-use districts. Now we're having the same discussion in these other commercial zones for these ground floor spaces, based on what we're seeing and it takes to support the kinds of land uses we want to see there.
Right, but if somebody comes in and they want to build something, and for their particular use, they see no need for 16-foot ceiling. In fact, maybe they don't even see a need for a 12-foot ceiling, but I'm a little hesitant to go to 16 feet because if you talk about the building height being a maximum of 35, then essentially, 35 feet, they're not going to get 3 stories out of that because they'd only have 19 feet left for on top of the 16-foot minimum, and they're not going to get 2 stories in 19 feet. So are we really saying
you can still fit 3 stories in all these
building.
commercial zones, even with a 16-foot ground floor ceiling height?
What, one would be 10 and one would only be 9 feet with all of the,
The way that
floor?
the way that the top floor is measured, it's measured, Kelly, you might have to help me out, but it's measured from more like 7 feet. So it's allowed to have that variation to make that flexibility happen. And so I think the intent behind the 16 feet is also to support the roll-up doors as well. Some of them require additional space for that roll-up space, some of them even up to 30 inches. And to have that space to have, a forklift actually come through the space, it does have to have a little bit more height than all of our mixed use zones actually. So this zone actually does kind of support that higher ceiling height vision.
Interesting, but we did in our prior discussion, as you said, I think we ended up with 14 for some things. I don't recall us ending up with 16 for some things, but
I believe we ended up at 16 for our highest use mixed use zone, the vertical mixed use zone, but we would have to go back and check.
So you think we ended up with like 14 and 16 or something like that? Okay.
Correct.
It just, I don't know, it feels, I'm a little concerned about that being a cost for folks. What would be the latitude for somebody to come in and say, I don't have any intent to use it in that way or that form. We're trying to preserve them for future uses, but it's always difficult to tell a property owner, the property owner now who wants to build something that, but we want to make sure you build it to allow some other things in the future.
Yeah, there's always a design, there will always be a design exception process to ask. What we have found is when somebody builds an office building for offices, it precludes future use. And
Right.
there's not many people that come in and tear down a building. So the property will forever not be allowed to be the flexible zone that we envision if we don't create the spaces that allow for that over time.
Okay, understand. All right, thank you. Councilmember Daris, questions? And let's try to keep
Well, just,
questions.
I'll keep it quick, but to comment on the 16-foot ceiling, it's funny, I almost think in some way, even a taller ceiling, I know you're gonna go, what? But would be almost better in some cases because it provides you the opportunity for a mezzanine space. 16, you can't, if you have a 16-foot tall ceiling, you're not gonna turn that into a second floor, for an office or something that you're gonna do upstairs. Maybe some sort of weird storage with a low ceiling. But again, going up to 20 feet would probably do it. But then you are limiting the overall height of the building or what you can do with it. But anyway, but as far as the 16 feet, I'm good with that. And I just wanted to comment on that. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, questions, Councilmember?
Yes. On the minimums front setbacks versus the fencing. If somebody wanted a low fence that's related to that how they want to decorate the front of the property, is that fencing requirement consistent with what we've done in the setbacks? I'm not sure that it is.
We can definitely add an allowance for like a low decorative fencing. I know there's some that have like a split rail just decoratively, and this is not intended to be that.
Yeah, I'm not looking at 6-foot or 8-foot visual screening fences flat up against the sidewalk. That's not going to give the right vibe on this zone. But shorter decorative fences, yes. Okay, so that could be distinguished. And looking at what we've got in what will become this zone now, do you have a sense of what percentage of the buildings currently meet that 20% transparent openings requirement?
I don't have a great sense. I think there are a lot of buildings, even when we look at the Joe Bella Center, when we look at Mitch's new development up there, I think a decent amount do generally have some windows and glazing facing El Camino Real.
Sure. I'm sure that a lot of places have some. I'm just trying to square the requirement for big roll-up door front and having 20% of it be glass. So you've got a roll-up door, but you also have a fair amount of frontage beside it where you've got to have windows and so forth.
The roll-up doors don't necessarily have to face El Camino, so it's based on site design. So your roll-up doors would be facing your loading areas, an interior parking lot, somewhere where you're going to have that ability to, again, get the forklifts through and things like that. It's not necessarily facing El Camino. So El Camino just has sort of a requirement to have some sort of storefront or entranceway that is glazed so that it's not a blank wall.
Yeah. Okay. So if you think about the area where Glasshead Studios has their shop, that's a fairly deep section of land, and it's got multiple banks of, if you will, of buildings. It's got 3 rows of buildings building back. Would this a requirement for the public street frontage transparently openings apply only to those portions of that area facing El Camino Real and not to any of the other buildings back behind?
Yeah, and I think she's not on El Camino in a little bit different zone, but yes, if that were to be built there, it's only the buildings along the public street.
Okay.
Base along the public street.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good question. Yeah, because those folks don't have a street frontage in effect. So, okay, let's go out and see if we have any public comment on this item.
Good evening. I'll try to make this quick. Can we put up the very last slide that was showed? If that's possible, please. While I'm waiting for that, I'll comment on the roll-up doors. Glenn's Repair has 10 foot. I can tell you, I wish I had 12, and 12 should be the minimum opening. So therefore, it should be 14 feet with a header, because getting things in and out, definitely. I don't know if you should put a requirement on max, but minimum for sure. I think is a great idea. If you look where those umbrellas are on this slide, there's a fence there. And that said no fencing at all. I think that should be written in that you can go 3 feet or 4 feet. Maybe it's see-through or something. Maybe you need to close your patios down in the evening for security reasons or ABC or something. So having a no fence, I think, is a mistake, unless you want to put a definition in. And then lastly, if you put a roll-up door in, and this is a glazed question, could you also put in beautiful glass doors behind it, and would that count as glazing? Thank you.
Okay, I think the first question you raised, Councilmember Funk asked that question and they answered that the fence discussion in this item as presented was talking about solid fences and stuff. Decorative fences were not intended to be excluded, and maybe just need to clarify that
We'll clarify that.
in the definition. Yeah. I'm not sure I understood the second question there. I don't know if staff has a comment on that. If you understood that and have a comment.
I'm not sure I understood it all the way.
Okay. I suggest you talk with staff afterwards. Go ahead. And Councilmember Funk.
I think the question is, if looking at the image here, on the right, you see some,
Roll up.
you see windows that are sort of rolled up or whatever. If the landowner decided to have windows and a roll-up door, a different structure so that the roll-up door would sort of cover the windows, but you had glass behind it, and so sometimes it could be covered with the roll-up and sometimes it would be open, would that qualify? So it's essentially like the roll-up door becomes a shutter. I'm hoping that I characterize that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we've considered a security shutter situation.
Essentially, that's what you're referring to, though, right? Is that you'd have a security shutter, so at night it
Yeah.
wouldn't be transparent, but during business day you'd roll it up and got a transparent door. Good question. Hadn't thought about that in that way. I think.
And that would be still considered a storefront. That's an opening. The idea is to have this welcoming, open appearance. It's part of the architecture.
Okay. Got it. But driving by in the middle of the night, it might not look so inviting.
Well, yeah.
Okay, understood. Any other comments then from council members? Okay.
I think this is okay. I do think it's important to clarify the fencing and make sure we have the open fencing. I know I can work with a 16-foot requirement in this zone, given the guidance of staff about the importance of roll-ups and forklifts, etc.
I probably still have a little bit of concern, but given my colleagues' comments and staff's explanation, I can live with the 16-foot in this instance. So, okay, any other comments? Staff, are we good in terms of the guidance provided? Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Genevieve. I believe we're ready to move on now to our council announcements and committee reports. And Councilmember Peak, if you're welcome to return, and we will hold you off till last, and we'll start on my right then with Councilmember Funk.
Okay, I'll report that last week, Mayor Pro Tem Dares and I were in Sacramento at the League of California Cities City Leaders Summit. This is an annual educational and lobbying opportunity, and was there advocating for our city with Senator Laird, Assemblymember Addis, and other members with regard to our wastewater treatment and homeless funding and other concerns for our city. I think and like many of us, the mayor was schlepping and serving soup at the Echo Empty Bowls fundraiser, which brought in over almost $100,000 for homeless services in our community and the shelter expansion there. So I meant, like many of us, I was happy to attend and support.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I got to serve soup alongside our fire chief, Casey Bryson. Okay, I actually had a city selection committee meeting this morning and which lasted very briefly, even shorter than our 17-minute meeting last time. Well, we reappointed 2 members of the Airport Land Use Commission. And we are going to be hosting the County Mayor's Roundtable or the Mayor's Meeting in May. We're going to do it right here in this chamber because it's always a beautiful thing. We're blessed to have the most impressive city hall for hundreds of miles around. So, and I did attend a special meeting of the of Central Coast Community Energy because of the rebate, the battery rebate program was oversubscribed. And so the decision had to be made as to, shut it off at the budgeted, well, it was already over budget, shut it off at the amount already paid or honor applications that had also subsequently been received. And the decision was made to honor all the applications received to the tune of an additional 3.7 million or 513 customers who are installing battery systems. And that's all I've got. IWMA did not meet in April. So, Mayor Pro Tem Daris.
Okay, well, I won't repeat what Councilmember Funk said. We were in Sacramento. It was a great few days, meeting with a lot of different people, and the sessions that we went to, I think, was very informative. APCD is meeting, well, in a couple of weeks. So I got that, and I'm looking forward to judging tamales this Saturday. So please join us for tamales and fun this Saturday.
Councilmember Pete.
No committee reports, but I'm also looking forward to eating tamales all morning, and that'll be a great time. Karen and I, my wife and I, had the pleasure of attending Habitat for Humanity's dinner in Edna Valley. It's a big fundraiser and very successful, and our very own Lorelei Capel had a hand in helping that evening, and it was just a great event. I recommend it next year to anybody who wants to attend.
Okay, thank you. Does any council member have any individual determinations or actions they'd like to bring up? Okay, seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all.